powerful millionaire laughed at his black maid, mocked her grief after her husband's death, and crushed her dignity with every insult. But when his $50 million deal was seconds from falling apart, it was this same maid who stepped forward and saved him with nothing but truth. For a brief moment, she turned his downfall into victory. Yet pride is dangerous. That night in his mansion, anger boiled, voices rose, and a gun was drawn. By the time the echo of the shot faded, the deal, the pride, and the laughter were all drenched in silence. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Maya Johnson stood at the graveside, her black dress clinging to her in the cold autumn wind. Her husband of 15 years had just been lowered into the ground. She held her son's hand tightly, though her boy was too young to understand why everyone was crying. To Maya, the silence of that moment was louder than the preacher's words. Her husband had been everything, her partner, her shield, the man who made the struggle of long hours as a maid worth it. Now, with his sudden death from a heart attack, she was left with her little boy, bills stacking higher than her paycheck, and the crushing emptiness of grief. The next morning, she still went to work. Her employer, Richard Coleman, was one of the richest men in New York. A self-made millionaire, or so he liked to remind everyone. His mansion stretched across acres, with marble floors that could swallow the sound of footsteps. But behind the polished doors, Richard's pride towered even higher than his house. When Maya walked into the living room with her cleaning supplies, Richard was already there, wearing his expensive tailored suit. He was on a business call, his voice booming with confidence as he bragged about his upcoming $50 million deal with a European investor. As soon as he hung up, his sharp blue eyes fell on Maya. "Back already?" he asked, smirking. "Didn't your husband just die yesterday? Couldn't find anyone else to scrub toilets in your place." The words cut deep, but Maya lowered her head. "I need the job, sir." Richard laughed, sipping his whiskey, though it wasn't even 10 a.m. yet. "Of course you do. People like you always do. Guess tragedy doesn't stop the dust from piling up, huh?" Maya's hands trembled, but she kept polishing the glass table. She had worked for the Colemans for 6 years, and this wasn't the first time Richard mocked her. He often joked about her accent, her clothes, and her maid ways. But today, so soon after burying her husband, the humiliation burned sharper. Later that evening, as she was cleaning near his study, she overheard Richard arguing on the phone. His tone wasn't as confident as before, his voice cracked with anger. "Listen, I don't care about your terms. I run this city, not you. You either sign tomorrow, or you lose out on the deal." He slammed the phone down, muttering curses under his breath. He poured himself another glass of whiskey and laughed bitterly. Then, noticing Maya nearby, he sneered. "What are you staring at, maid? Hoping I'll drop dead like your husband, so you can clean up another mess." Maya froze, her breath caught in her chest. She wanted to scream, to throw the glass she held right at him, but instead, she turned back to her work. That night, after tucking her son into bed in their small apartment, Maya thought about Richard's words. He had no idea that she understood more than he thought. Years ago, before her husband fell sick, Maya had studied business management at a community college. She never finished because money ran out, but she still knew enough to recognize what Richard was up against. She had heard every word of his heated call, and something told her this proud millionaire was standing on shaky ground. The next morning, Maya arrived at the Coleman mansion with swollen eyes. She hadn't slept much. Her son had cried through the night, asking where his father was. She had lied softly, saying Daddy's in heaven now. But the truth weighed like bricks in her chest. Richard was already pacing in the living room, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was sharp, impatient. "No, no extensions. The deal closes today. If he doesn't show up, I'll find someone else with deeper pockets." He ended the call and noticed Maya placing fresh flowers in the vase. "Flowers?" he scoffed. "What's the point? They're just like people, look nice for a while, then they rot. Just like your husband." Maya's hands tightened on the vase, but she said nothing. Richard grinned, clearly enjoying the sting of his words. To him, she was nothing more than furniture, always there, never speaking, always cleaning up his mess. That afternoon, Richard hosted a pre-meeting with his associates. Maya was instructed to serve drinks and snacks, nothing more. She moved quietly among them, her head bowed, though her ears caught every word. Richard, one of the men, said, "The investor isn't convinced. He thinks you're bluffing about the numbers. If he pulls out, the whole $50 million deal collapses." Richard chuckled arrogantly, swirling his glass of brandy. "Relax. He won't walk away. Everyone wants a piece of me. I'm Richard Coleman. He needs me more than I need him." Maya glanced up just briefly. That wasn't true, and she knew it. She had overheard enough yesterday to know the investor held all the cards. But she also knew if she spoke up, Richard would laugh in her face again. After the meeting, Richard cornered her in the kitchen. "You enjoy eavesdropping, don't you?" he sneered. "Think you're smart enough to understand our talks." He leaned closer, his voice low and cutting. Don't forget, you're just a maid. Scrub floors, polish glass, and maybe you'll keep your little paycheck. But don't fool yourself. You'll never be more than that. Maya's throat tightened, but she refused to cry. She thought of her husband, of the promises they once made to build a better life. She swallowed the pain and kept working. That night, while Richard prepared for the big meeting the next day, Maya stayed late to clean the study. She noticed a folder left open on his desk. Charts, numbers, projections, all of them looked shaky. She realized then why Richard had been drinking so heavily. He was bluffing with fake numbers, and the investor was about to catch him. As she closed the folder, her heart raced. She wasn't supposed to see this, but fate had placed it right in front of her. Suddenly, Richard barged into the study, his tie loosened and his face red with drink. "What the hell are you doing at my desk?" he barked. Maya froze, the folder still half open. I was just dusting, sir." Richard narrowed his eyes and smirked. "Dusting, huh? Or we're trying to read things too big for your little brain? Don't waste your time, Maya. You'll never understand this world. This is a man's game. Rich men, not widowed maids with dead husbands." Her breath caught in her throat. His cruelty cut deeper each time, but she held her ground. She bowed her head and walked away, though inside her chest, a fire began to burn. That night, lying awake in her small apartment, Maya thought long and hard. She wasn't supposed to care about Richard's problems. After all, he treated her like dirt. But the truth was, if he lost this deal, the mansion, her job, and her only means of survival would vanish too. Her son needed food. Rent needed paying. She couldn't afford to walk away, no matter how much he insulted her. And what Richard didn't know was that Maya understood exactly how to save him, because hidden behind his arrogance was a mistake only she had noticed. The morning of the big deal arrived, and Richard Coleman was a storm inside his own house. He barked orders at his assistants, tossed papers across the table, and yelled at the chef for bringing his breakfast late. Maya was polishing the silverware in the dining room when Richard spotted her. "Make sure the place doesn't smell like bleach when my guest arrives," he snapped. "This man's worth more than your entire family tree, so don't embarrass me." Maya bit her lip. She wanted to say something, anything, but she swallowed the words. By noon, sleek black cars pulled into the driveway. Richard's investors stepped out, led by Mr. Erickson, the European tycoon whose signature would seal the $50 million deal. He was a tall man with cold gray eyes and a reputation for never falling for flattery. Maya served drinks as the men sat in the massive living room, the air tense with hidden battles. She noticed Erickson's sharp gaze flicking through Richard's documents. His face betrayed nothing, but Maya could tell he wasn't impressed. Richard leaned back in his chair, grinning. "As you can see, Mr. Erickson, the numbers speak for themselves. You won't find a better investment in all of New York." Erickson's eyes lifted, calm but firm. "Perhaps, but something about your projections seems unrealistic." Richard's jaw tightened, that he chuckled, forcing his arrogance to cover his nerves. "Unrealistic? Come on. My team is the best. I don't make mistakes." But Maya knew better. She had seen the papers in his study. His projections weren't just unrealistic. They were dangerously misleading. If Erickson dug deeper, Richard would be exposed as a fraud. As she cleared the empty glasses, Maya passed close enough to hear Erickson's whisper to his associate in accented English. "This man is bluffing. We walk after lunch." Her pulse quickened. She knew what that meant. Richard was about to lose everything. And if he lost, so did she. Later, while Richard excused himself to take a call, Maya carried a tray of dishes through the hallway. Suddenly, she heard voices. Erickson and his associate had stepped aside for a private talk. "He's hiding something," Erickson said plainly. "If he cannot provide real figures by the end of this meeting, we'll cancel." Maya froze, her grip tightening on the tray. Her heart pounded. She wasn't supposed to be here, wasn't supposed to hear this, but she did. And now she had a choice. For the first time, she saw Richard's downfall laid out before her eyes. The man who mocked her, insulted her dead husband, and crushed her spirit day after day. He was standing on the edge of ruin. All she had to do was nothing, and he would fall. But then she thought of her little boy, the job she couldn't afford to lose, the paycheck that put food on their table. Her legs trembled as she stepped away quietly, but her mind was racing. Richard Coleman was about to walk into the most important meeting of his life with the wrong weapons. And she, the maid he laughed at, was holding the knowledge that could change it all. That evening, when the meeting resumed in the grand dining room, Maya stood by the wall, tray in hand. Richard strutted in, trying to mask his unease with laughter. Erickson's gaze stayed sharp, his patience thinning. Richard began his pitch again, throwing big words and bigger promises across the table. But Maya's eyes flicked between the two men, her stomach churning with tension. She knew the moment of collapse was seconds away, and though Richard would never admit it, he needed her. Richard's voice filled the dining room, but it no longer carried the confidence it once did. His laughter sounded forced, his words rushed. Erickson sat stiffly, fingers drumming against the polished table, his face unreadable. Maya stood in the corner with her tray, her heart pounding. Every second felt heavier. She could see Ericsson's associate slide a paper toward him, whispering something that made Ericsson's brows tighten. "Mr. Coleman," Ericsson finally said, his accent slicing through the room like a blade. "Your projections on revenue growth are impossible. I have done business long enough to recognize inflated numbers. I need the truth, not fantasy." Richard's smile faltered, but he forced it back quickly. "You doubt me? Do you know who I am? My deals don't fail." Ericsson's jaw stiffened. "Arrogance does not equal trust. If you cannot explain, we are finished here." The room grew tense that Richard's men shifted uncomfortably, stealing glances at one another. Richard's hand gripped his glass, so tight it might shatter. Maya's palms were sweaty against the tray. She could hear her own breath, fast and shallow. She thought of the folder she had seen in Richard's study, of the mistakes that were obvious even to her, a maid. Mistakes Richard was too proud to admit. Ericsson pushed back his chair. "Enough wasting time. My driver is waiting." He began to stand. Richard jumped up, his voice desperate now. "Wait, listen, I can prove," but the investor was already turning. Maya's body moved before her mind caught up. She set down her tray with trembling hands and stepped forward. Her voice was small at first, almost breaking. "Mr. Ericsson, please." Every head in the room turned toward her. Richard's face burned red with fury. "What the hell are you doing, maid? Get out." But Maya didn't move. She swallowed hard, meeting Ericsson's sharp eyes. "I clean this house every day. I see papers lying around. I may not have a suit or millions, but I know enough to see the numbers you're worried about. You're right, they don't add up. But I also saw something Richard hasn't mentioned. Something that might matter to you." The room went dead silent. Richard slammed his fist on the table. "You worthless woman. You dare speak in front of my guest. You're done here. You hear me? Done." But Ericsson raised a hand, his eyes locked on Maya. "Let her speak." Richard's jaw dropped. "What? She's a maid." Ericsson's expression didn't change. "Sometimes truth comes from where we least expect it. Continue." Maya's voice shook, but she steadied herself. She explained how she noticed inconsistencies in Richard's revenue chart, but also saw a separate file, one Richard had ignored, that showed the real strength of his company. A new partnership with a tech supplier that had barely been mentioned. "That partnership is solid," Maya said, her voice firming as she spoke. "It may not look as big as the other numbers, but it's real. It's sustainable. If you want truth, that's where it is. Not in the fancy charts," he waves around. The room stayed frozen. Ericsson leaned back, studying her carefully. Richard stood speechless, his face pale, sweat forming on his forehead. For the first time, the proud millionaire had no words. The silence in the dining room stretched like a knife's edge. Maya stood tall, her voice steady now, though her heart raced. She had spoken truth in a place where she was supposed to be invisible. Ericsson's cold gray eyes stayed fixed on her. Then, slowly, a faint smile tugged at his lips. "She is correct," he said. "This partnership, it is exactly the kind of thing I value. Real numbers. Real stability." He turned his gaze on Richard, who stood frozen in disbelief. "You mock her, yet she sees more clearly than you do." The words were a humiliation greater than any Richard had ever known. The powerful millionaire, stripped bare in front of his own people, saved not by his brilliance but by the maid he had ridiculed. Richard's fists clenched at his sides, his chest heaving. His pride was a live wire ready to snap. "Enough," he hissed. His voice trembled, not with fear, but with rage. He stepped closer to Maya, his face inches from hers. "You think you can humiliate me in my own house? You think you're smarter than me, you pathetic maid?" Maya's lips parted, but before she could respond, Richard's hand darted to the drawer of the sideboard. The metallic glint of a gun filled the room. Gasps erupted from the associates. Chairs scraped against the floor. Ericsson shot to his feet, his face hard. "Richard, put that down." But Richard's pride had gone past the point of no return. His voice cracked high and wild. "She thinks she saved me? No, she ruined me. In front of everyone." Maya's chest rose and fell quickly. She clutched the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Her eyes flicked to Ericsson, then back to Richard. She didn't plead. She didn't beg. She stood straight, dignity wrapped around her like armor. "I only told the truth," she whispered. Richard's hand shook, but his fury blinded him. And then the gunshot split the room. The tray Maya had left on the table clattered to the floor, plates shattering into pieces. She staggered, her hand pressing against her chest, eyes wide with shock. For a moment, silence swallowed everything. The deal, the money, the mansion. Then Maya collapsed, her body hitting the polished floor with a hollow thud. Ericsson's voice thundered. "You fool. She was the only reason I considered trusting you." The associates rushed toward the door, some shouting, some pulling out their phones. Richard stood frozen, the gun still in his hand, his face drained of color as the weight of what he had done sank in. The $50 million deal was gone. His respect gone, his power gone, and at his feet lay the woman he had mocked, insulted, and underestimated, the woman who had saved him, only to be destroyed by his own pride. And for the first time in his life, Richard Coleman's laughter was gone. If you like this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also, and other to strengthen our community, let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.